I must have only been about 4 or 5 when I encountered the creatures in my room. I still had a toddler bed, not quite a single, the one that is converted from a large cot. It was low to the ground because I was prone to rolling out in my sleep. Near the foot of the bed, against the wall, there was a big red toy box made of plastic in the shape of a treasure chest. The chest was crammed full of toys, mostly little figures of cartoons I'd watch. Street Sharks, He-Man, Thundercats, biker mice from Mars, a few Pokemon figures, but mostly action men. I had a night light, a little plug in one of the sides of the headboard, in the shape of a crescent moon. It glowed a faint orange that stayed on throughout the night. My mum always left my door ajar a little. We had a street light situated right outside the hallway window. It shone a strip of white light onto my wall. The toy box was next to the door. It was a small room, but the door just missed the sides of the box when you opened it, as if it had been purposely built for the space. I was awakened by the sound of cracking and squeaking, the noise a dog makes when chewing a plastic ball. Small bumps and thuds came from the foot of my bed. I sat up and rubbed my eyes, mouth agape, still practically asleep. I sat and listened for a few seconds. The sound of rustling, things being clanged together, snapping and gnawing, crept over my footboard, as well as the constant clatter. I could make out faint squeaking, very low and quiet, but it was there, more like that of a guinea pig than a mouse. But something was different about it. At the end, instead of rising higher, the tone dropped into a small growl. Slowly, I raised myself onto my hands and knees and crept forward to the bottom of the bed. This side of the room was dark. The nightlight's measly orange glow didn't reach past the bed. I peered over the footboard at the toy box. The lid was open, which was strange, and toys littered the floor. I watched as the noises came from inside the box. Something was moving, but amongst the figures, I couldn't tell what it was. An action man came tumbling out onto the floor. One of the flippers he was wearing had been shredded. The other leg stopped in a mangled stump halfway down. Examining the other toys on the carpet, all of them had bite marks, limbs missing, or faces chewed into deformed plastic mush. Little hands, arms, and bits of chewed up parts were scattered on the floor also. Bewildered, I raised myself up and leaned forward, trying to get a better look inside the chest. At first, I still couldn't distinguish what was moving. Letting my eyes focus, I made out something furry. At first, I thought it might be the Furby I had in there, but whatever it was had its back to me, hunched over. Its fur looked damp and spiked up in messy clumps. A long, thin tail covered in small hairs slithered upright, the end twitching from side to side. I noticed something else move within the chest, and scanning the whole thing, I could make out 2 more tails, both different sizes, one longer, one shorter, protruding from deeper inside the mound of toys. I'm not really sure why, but whatever they were, I didn't want to be in the room with them. They scared me. Slowly, I crept from my bed and tiptoed towards the door. Reaching it as it wasn't far, I placed a hand on it, still looking at the box, still watching the tails flicker. I cautiously opened the door. Silently, it swung open. At first, the white strip of light from the hallway grew as the exit out of the room grew larger. Even though I'd done it countless times, I slowed down once the door moved closer to the edge of the toy box, intently watching the distance between the two. As I slowed, the hinges of the door creaked loudly, making me jump. I froze on the spot. I listened out for the sound of movement, but there was none. The chewing, the snapping, the gnawing, they'd all stopped. Turning my head, I peered at the toy box. I was met with 2 whitish yellow eyes. They reflected the light of the crescent moon and the hallway. They didn't seem to look directly at me, more off to my right, at the door. A nose, wrinkled and leathery, twitched as the 2 long slits extended and retracted. A slow, wheezing breath escaped as a mouth began to open. It grew wider and wider, taking over most of the face. Incredibly sharp, needle-like teeth dripped with saliva. Bits of plastic and fake hair had been impaled and wedged in between them. There seemed to be no pattern to them. They just protruded outwards or downwards in all forms of thicknesses, size. What looked like horns or ears, I couldn't really tell, protruded from atop the head and around the eyes, as if the eyelids stretched into a pointed, contorted spike. The creature didn't move, neither did I. Slowly and with very little noise, toys were pushed out of the way, and 2 more heads arose from the medley, all staring in the direction of the door, all white and yellow eyes, like bowls of molding milk. My heart drummed on my chest. Tears accumulated in the corners of my eyes. The creatures were different sizes, from a very small one to one the size of maybe a large rabbit. This one opened its mouth wider than the other and let out that squeak I'd heard before. It was just air at first, a whisper which rose into a muted squeak that lasted a second or 2, then dropped dramatically into a low grumble, maybe a growl. This snapped me from my frozen state, and I swung the door open as quick as I could and bolted down the hall. I could hear the patter of claws on the laminate floor behind me. A sensation rose from within my stomach, like a hot burst that flowed through my body. I remember wailing as I ran, feeling the tears stream down my face. My mother's room was at the other end of the hallway, closest to the window. I ran past my brother's room. His door was closed, past the open toilet door, and slammed into my mother's. The pitter-patter on the laminate changed to thuds on carpet. My mother's bed was one of those ottoman ones, so it was very high off the floor. Before I reached it, I leapt, slamming into the side. Kicking my legs and grabbing handfuls of duvet, I pulled myself up. A pain shot up my left leg from just above my ankle. I cried out, and my mum spun round to face me. "What's up, babe?" she murmured, pulling me onto the bed. "There's monsters in my room," I said through tears and shaky breaths. "It's just a bad dream, little man." She pulled me close and cuddled me under the thick feathered down duvet. I cried for a while, but the lulling and stroking of the hair my mum did sent me off to sleep. The next morning, I'd pretty much forgot about what happened, and being influenced by my mum's comments, put what I could remember down to a nightmare. Getting up from the bed before my mum had awoke, I headed back to my room. The door was open wide, and from the hallway I could see the top of the toy box open. Creeping to the doorway, parts of toys still littered the floor, but there was no sounds. It was deathly quiet. I flicked the main light on and scanned the room. Nothing. I knew my mom wouldn't believe me if I told her what had happened, so instead I picked up all the bits of toys and put them back in the chest. Once I'd tidied up, I walked back into the hallway and headed for the bathroom. I climbed onto the step next to the toilet and pulled down my pajama pant. My hand passed down the bottom of my leg when I pulled my pants back up, and I winced. Contorting my back, I turned and looked down at my leg. There, at the bottom, was a long, bloody red mark. I told my mum when she woke up, and she said I must have caught it on the bed or the toy box during the night. For a long time, I'd forgotten about that memory, until 26 or so years later, whilst in bed with my wife, my 3-year-old daughter came running into my room in the middle of the night, saying there were monsters in her room with big white eyes. The memories flooded back to me. I haven't been able to find any other story like it, so out of desperation, I thought I'd put it on here and see what others say. A repressed memory of a bad dream? And a coincidence from a 3-year-old? Or a childhood memory long forgotten, unlocked by a second encounter?